Get the brooms out. Suck at Iowa. The Badgers pick up a road win in the Big Ten. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Part of Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ryan Arias. Really do appreciate every single person tuning in as always. Today's episode brought to you by Super Bowl by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is obviously almost here. No better place to make everything more exciting than with the FanDuel Sportsbook. And if you win, you score $200 in bonus bucks with your first $5 bet. That's download the app, head over to FanDuel.com to get started. We got my guy. I haven't had Dylan on the show in forever because he's busier than ever. He's got, family stuff, and he's got his own brand. But I'm always excited when I get Dylan on the show. Dylan, welcome back, my friend.
No, it's good to be here, man. This is long overdue, and it's time that this paternity leave turns into a little bit of normalcy on my end.
So let's talk about it. We always do this. We do the good, the mid, and the ugly. I'll kick it over to you to start with. The Badgers win road game against Iowa. They pull away at the end. What's your good in this game?
My good is, nothing too world beating, but it's the law office of John and John, doing their thing today. Blackwell and Tonje combined for 41 points, 12 boards, 6 assists. When you got that kind of production out of, your two primary scorers on any given night, that's going to carry you almost regardless of the environment of the opponent. When you have so many other guys surrounding them that I think kind of excel in their respective roles, like Crowell, like Winter, like Klesmit, who are all capable of doing more on any given night. But I think those are the two guys that on really regardless if it's home or away, those are the guys that you want kind of pacing the offense. And they did that today. And, so for me, that's the good. It's just your guys did their thing. And when they're hanging combined 41, 12, and 6, that'll get it done most nights.
Yeah, so I had that written down as well. So I'll shift off to that one because I think that's the lead of my good is you got the effort you need from your two main guys. I think I said this before. I think winning is a bit of a skill. Like teams have to kind of know how to win. And this is not we were at about 10 minutes left in the second half, and I put in the Discord, all right, we can move past trying to win pretty. This is not going to be a win pretty situation. But can you win ugly? And they did. And they pulled away. They put it away. They hit free throws. Tonje's such a high IQ guy at the end of the game. Like that drive down just the baseline where he gets fouled, picks up 2 free throws. It's just like stealing candy from a baby. So I think winning on the road, man, that's my good. I don't want to state the obvious, but that's not an easy thing to do when you don't play great.
Right. And I think that Iowa kind of presented a unique trap game of sorts. They're shorthanded, but they have shooters. They play with pace. They are a good offensive team. Obviously it's a game that you expect to win. You win and you were favored on the road and all that. But they have some unique offensive firepower, and on a night where I thought they played pretty sloppy coming out of the gate, and they were able to overcome it. And I think that's one thing with this team that I continue to be pretty encouraged by on the nights where, and there have been far more nights this year where they have had it than they haven't. There's only, you can only count on one hand, maybe 6-7 times all year where it's like they just looked really disoriented, out of sorts, but they continue to find a way. They always manage to show some fight and battle back. Even in some of the games that they've lost, it seems like they've kind of taken those punches, given their counterpunch, and they haven't always come out on top. But we haven't seen every Wisconsin team in years past be able to do the same. And so even in the games that they've lost, feel like I've come away more impressed by the product overall. It's inspired more hope in their ability to overcome a night where they don't have it.
Well, we had a couple comments in the chat that said, hey, last year's team would have lost this. And I think last year's team probably would have lost this game.
I think AJ Storr would have thought it was AJ Storr time and left his feet a little early and done something stupid with the ball. And that's the difference, I think, with a guy like John Tonje, like you mentioned.
Yeah, he just knows how to play. All right, let me start with my mid. We'll kick it to. We'll go back and forth on these. I just thought the offense was disjointed. I felt like early in the game, you had an opportunity to maybe establish a little bit more of a paint presence. I'm going to get into Crowell and Winter in a sec, but it felt like we were settling a little bit. Like our offense is too good to come down and take a single-sided jump shot against Iowa. Move the ball, drive the ball, create some mismatches, make them work. It felt like we let them off the hook a little bit. I just felt like a little disjointed. And I almost wonder if the Freeman thing, here's the thing with, you're playing a team that's missing a big cog. Sometimes it's almost hurts you in a way, because I think they kind of came in and a little lackadaisical offensively.
I completely agree. And they didn't apply anything special in terms of ball pressure early on. And it felt like they sped us up. Obviously, we're playing at a faster pace, but it felt like they sped us up. And there were just a couple of times early on where we were just handing the ball away. And, I don't want to say this team has been like way more turnover prone, because that's just not true. But they're playing a lot more possessions a game right now than they traditionally would. But Iowa got them uncomfortable early on, and it gave them a chance to kind of jump out on them and, let the home environment kind of take over a little bit.
Well, what was your mid? Is it similar or?
My mid is, I tried to, I gave it just a little bit of thought, and I tried to kind of come up with something that's like not inherently a negative, but not overtly a positive. And so I just came away with like no single bench player thought like really showed out tonight. I mean, Kamari McGee, I think had a nice game in some real moments, but I thought that everyone gave them a little something today. And so that's kind of my mid, where like, lately we've been getting Gilly James doing his thing over and over. Early in the season, we've had Kamari McGee. Like, it seems like we've always had somebody off the bench giving that extra effort and maybe kind of producing like that fifth guy. And today we didn't have that, but it also didn't matter. We got a little something from everyone. Kamari McGee chipped in a little bit. Gilmore hit that first three. Xavier Amos decided to look like Dwight Howard for about 30 seconds there. And then Jack Janicki hit that corner three. So that everyone gave you a little bit of something, and that mattered today, especially in a game where, Iowa led for, I'm pretty sure, over 17 minutes.
Mm-hmm. How about your bad? We'll kick it to you for that one.
My bad today is going to be Gilly James. He gave you that first three, like I said, and I was like, oh, here we go. Like he's rolling. It's his time. And there are a few households in the state of Wisconsin that have been banging the Carter Gilmore drum harder than we have over the years. I think he's somebody who people have consistently gotten too hung up on what he can't do and didn't appreciate enough of what he could do. And This year he's been, his development, don't need to rehash it, but it's been probably one of the more impressive, career arcs, I guess, from like, I mean, he still is a walk-on, technically, but like just as far as he's come. Today he was my ugly. He hit that three early on, but he fouled out. He was the only player with a negative box score plus minus. It wasn't terrible, but didn't get anything special out of Gilmore today. And it was a day where I think the front court maybe, you would have liked to see a little bit more, especially given no Owen Freeman.
Well, Dister 72 says ugly was the execution of the fouling strategy before half. I do want to point out again, because it feels like every game I come on here and talk about end of half situations where the Badgers have consistently, I feel like, left a few points on the table there, whether it's taking a shot too early, fouling incorrectly. Last game, Blackwell, remember that foul with 2.6 seconds left that put they were in the bonus. Today, like, you have fouls to burn. I get it. Like, everybody gets the strategy, right? Disrupt what I was doing offensively. You can't burn all those fouls and leave 6 seconds left on the clock. It's just little things, but little things matter in big games.
And they had the end of the first half there, they had that 2-for-1 opportunity that they weren't able to convert on, which, maybe that's more of a credit to Iowa. It kind of sealed off Blackwell's driving lane. But it was just another missed opportunity there.
The other one I would hit on is Corral and Winter, 11 combined points. They did okay on the glass. Like I think combined, you get about, I don't have the box score, but 14 or so rebounds between the two of them, somewhere in that range. I think one had 8, one had 6. There was a 3-play stretch with Winter where Winter has these moments, man. It's like the roller coaster a little bit, where there's just some moments where the roller coaster always, as you're pulling into the end, you're kind of left wanting more, right? And there's that 3-play stretch where he kind of fumbled one, then fumbled another one. In a game like this, I think you needed your front court to be a little more consistent offensively. And I think both left points on the table today.
I completely agree. And with Nolan Winter, I mean, I guess, generally speaking, I try to remain glass half full kind of guy. And while that is kind of frustrating, to me, it just shows how much ceiling is still left, because he still managed to be all season in his role, just incredibly impactful. He's been largely very efficient all season long. And sometimes you almost want him to take more shots, force the issue a little bit. There are games where, even in the low post, he'll show you a little something. The footwork is improving. I mean, last year, people kind of forget, he was like a baby deer at times. The coordination was not all there yet, didn't fully match the athletic profile. And I think he's taken a ginormous step. The training staff has worked with him a ton in the offseason. He's put on good weight, and like you see so many more flashes. But yeah, it seems like there are times where he gets out of his comfort zone and maybe tries to force the issue a little bit. And yeah, it shows you how much room is still left, which I guess because we won today, I'm going to choose to just look at that more under the lens of what he still has to give.
Yeah, there's a huge ceiling for him, man. I agree completely. All right, we're going to take a quick second here. We're going to come back. X Factor player of the game, plus a question on the rotation. Are we a little surprised maybe Xavier Amos after that first half didn't get a few more minutes in the second half? That's coming up next. Locked On Badgers. First, a quick break for our friends of the show. And as always, a quick second to say thank you for tuning in to Locked On Badgers. As always, today's episode brought to you by our great friends over at Prizepicks. Prizepicks is incredible. Obviously, Super Bowl's coming up, but any type of sports you need, Prizepicks is the ultimate in daily fantasy. You don't have to compete against the thousands of people who spend so many hours just digging into every magazine and every nook and cranny for information. You don't got time for that because we have to make time to do all the other stuff we got to do, like kids, family, life, drinking beer, eating wings. All those things take away from your fantasy football time. That's why DFF, our Prizepicks is here. It makes it easy, simple, just more or less than one or two stat categories, and that's it. It's you against the stats. That's it. It's simple. It's easy, which I need more of my life. That's what Prizepicks is here for. Billions of winnings have already been awarded, over 10 million members. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game. All right, let's get back into this. Get my good friend Dylan back on the show, and I've missed having Dylan on. He's been busy, which I do want to get to here. Man, where can people find all the stuff that you've been up to lately?
Yeah, so as many of y'all know in the past, kind of gone through a little bit of a transition here, but you can find my work at badgernotes.com, which has since transitioned to more of a newsletter format, which I would love for you guys to subscribe to, for you to subscribe. That's where you can find my work. Also the publisher over at Athlon for both the Wisconsin Badgers site and now recently added the Milwaukee Brewers into the mix. Brought over my guy, Dave Gasper, who a lot of you guys probably follow his work as well. So kind of growing some of those things over there. And, once we kind of get a little bit more stability in this Graph household, Talking Badgers will make its return soon enough.
Yeah, and definitely great podcast and great camaraderie with that group for sure. I want to ask you,
I don't know if it's great podcasting. Every episode has a chance to be our best show or our last show.
That's why people watch. You got to see the extremes and the swings. Let me ask you this before we get into player of the game. Does this feel like a frustrating win to you? Because Badger Bournemouth fan says 11-point road win is frustrating ?
No. I mean, I don't think that I can really look at any Big Ten road win as a frustrating one. I mean, I understand that, and going into any given game, you want to not just win, but win pretty and look like everything is firing on all cylinders. But I think that there's kind of beauty in having to work through these things, and especially like look back to last February. What did we go 2-6 and just kind of lost who we were. I'd rather this team be able to kind of go through some of those trials and tribulations now, work through the ebbs and flows, and just have to grind it out and, win ugly sometimes, because in March, sometimes the shots aren't going to be falling, as we've seen plenty of times. And, this team, I think the ability to kind of work through some of these things and still come out with an 11-point win in a game where we're not all super impressed with the product. I think it's an important step. It's always nice to beat Fran McCaffrey too.
Oh, dude, we had a comment earlier in the chat. I put it up here. It said, one of the guys in the chat said, nobody's better than beating Fran McCaffrey. It's like the best coach to beat in basketball. Maybe him or Izzo. I don't know. Like they're probably in a similar tier to me. I think Fran more so, right? Because Izzo has a lot of respect. Let me ask you that. I feel like this is almost a testament to the team, because I agree this was not a pretty win. I don't want to rehash everything we said in the first segment, but now you're seeing that this team can win a game where it's a little ugly on the road. We already know they can shoot a team out of the gym. We know that they can win by getting to the paint and hitting free throws, by shooting jumpers. Like it just feels like this team, and from a bunch of different spots. You mentioned the bench players. It feels like this is the type of team that if you're an opposing coach, an opposing team, is really hard to game plan for.
Without a doubt. And I mean, listen to any coach's post-game presser after they play Wisconsin and lose. Almost every single one of them has walked out and said the same thing, asking them like, how do you stop this offense? And there's been 3 separate occasions this year where said coach has gone, if you have any ideas, I'm open to it. Like when you have 5 shooters on the floor, I mean, I want to be clear, this is no disrespect to Tyler Wall. I love Tyler Wall, but by simply inputting another shooter there, and being able to space the floor like that at all times. And then, obviously Kamari McGee turning into just the best 3-point shooter in the country on his volume. Carter Gilmore becoming, a quality 3-point shooter. Like, what are you supposed to do when the 7 guys that you play the most heavily, are all able to space the floor? Even Jack Janicki's a guy you got to respect. Before the season, Gedrick Stumbris and I, we were talking to Kirk Penny, and he referenced to Jack Janicki being the best shooter on the team.
Yep.
And so they have so many options. Xavier Amos is a guy who has fallen well short of expectations. We'll talk about him in a moment, but if that's your 9th guy who also has the ability to stretch the floor, like, you're keeping defenses honest at all times. And I also think beyond that, like, yeah, I know that Max Klesman has taken a lot of heat this year, and deservedly so. Like, he's shot poorly from the field, poorly from 3. But I do think that it is getting overlooked at least a little bit what he's done as a shot creator for this team. I mean, he's leading the team in assists. I mean, his assist percentage is at a career high. His assist to turnover ratio is really good. And while I can agree that his shot selection at times is a little puzzling and really kind of looks the part of a guy who's trying to shoot his way through it more than take what's given to him to get out of it, which I think is what you'd prefer, he's found other ways to impact this offense that I think he's been able to do it in a meaningful way despite how poorly he shot.
Yeah, I love that point, man. That's a point that I brought up as well. Like, assist rate career high. He's getting into the paint. He's finding shooters. And here's the thing. The other thing, and I've said this a lot, people listen to the show would know this, teams still close out on him. Like, teams still space the floor because he's there. So as much as people can kind of groan sometimes about the percentage, about some of the looks, and I've listened, Coach Gard would agree with some of that. He said it. Teams still close out on him like they have to, which opens everything up. The moment teams stop doing that, the moment they start closing out 3 feet short, then you have a major issue. Until then, it's fine. It really is. It doesn't bother me that much.
100%. I mean, you look at the roster and, maybe this is just my opinion, but I don't think we have any like elite slashers on the team. But I think that we're seeing all of these different guys be able to get into the paint and attack the rim a lot more effortlessly because of this spacing and these things. Like, it takes all 5. I mean, Max is not, special in terms of getting to the rim, but he's consistently found himself in the paint. Probably one of my most pleasant surprises coming into the season has been probably the biggest question I had in going back and looking over John Tonje's old film coming in was just, is he someone who can give you a threat to get to the rim?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Now that looks like the dumbest thing ever because that's what he's done consistently all season. And, obviously Greg's hammered home playing off 2 feet, and he's doing that more consistently. He lets it slide sometimes, but like, he's been able to do it. I think John Blackwell is a well above average slasher. He picks his spots really well, but just the point being, you have all of these different guys who I don't think are elite at doing it, but are not having a lot of difficulty in being able to get to their spots because of the spacing that they have.
Player of the game, Tonje for you?
Yeah, it's got to be Tonje for me. And there was even a few times in there where he took threes that I thought were good looks. I think that's probably one of the biggest pieces of this offense where maybe I'll give him a pass today a little bit just because they ended up winning. But like, sometimes when you shoot, the ball doesn't go through the hoop. And I know that sounds like the dumbest, most obvious statement of all time, but it's true. Like, they generated good looks, and there were a lot of them that didn't fall. They had a couple of reloads where they took a second one, didn't fall. I'm a process over, I basically, if you make the right reads, you take the right shots, I can live with the process, even if the ball doesn't go through. And I think he even had potential to be looking at like a 28-point game today. I thought he played pretty well. Yeah,
it's my player of the game as well. It's just, he has such a calming effect on the entire team, on the entire roster when he's out there. Like, you can almost tangibly feel it when the ball is swung to him in the corner late in the game, and he's got a bit of an ISO. I'm at the point now where, regardless of result, and I agree with you, I think if you take good quality shots, that's all you can ask for. And at the end of the game, when the ball gets swung to him, I have such a feel that he's going to make an intelligent play that I'm basically okay with whatever comes next.
I couldn't agree more. He's never too high. He's never too low. And I think that's really special. And like you said, has a very calming effect on a team. I mean, you hate to pile on a guy like Storr just because he's gone. Like, it's not what I'm trying to do here, but if it was late in the shot clock last year, Storr would have pressed. Storr would have taken an off-balance look. He would have tried to get to the rim. He would have left his feet without knowing what he was doing with the ball yet. Like, there wasn't that same control aspect, and Tonje plays within himself and within the confines of the offense so much better. And I think it just has allowed all of his teammates to trust him so much more. Like he's been a stabilizing presence for this team as a whole, but really just specifically the offense. He's been invaluable, just a monster hit in the portal.
Let me ask you this, and we haven't talked in a long time. I have a bunch of questions. I'm going to run out of time, but were you surprised Amos didn't get more minutes in the second half? So that first half, you have obviously an offensive rebound. Now, you got to be careful because if he had just caught that and tipped it in, nobody is like, oh, that Amos moment in the first. It's still just 2 points. It's an offensive rebound tip. It's the same as a tip in, guys. You don't get extra minutes because you dunk it. However, I thought he had a nice baseline drive where it didn't work out, but he worked himself into a good spot, got the offensive rebound, tried to finish. I like some of that aggressiveness. I like him on the glass. And it felt like this was a game where Iowa was out athleting you a little bit in the front court, and Amos gave him that. I was surprised he didn't get more run in the second half.
I'm going to be honest. I would agree with that. I didn't think he was doing anything special, and I don't think he's at a place yet where he can consistently give you anything special. And by that, I think he really is thinking when he's on the floor. But it's okay, because if you look at where he was at the beginning of the season to where he is at now, yes, he's thinking. Yes, maybe sometimes that makes a rotation like a half step later than it would normally be. But I will take that every day of the week rather than him hoisting a three, because I thought nobody loved seeing themselves shoot more than Marcus Ilver or Isaac Lindsey. And then I met Xavier Amos, and I was like, no, I'm wrong. I'm dead wrong. But he has really put in the work to try to play within this system and within the role specifically that's been asked of him, because your usage can't be as high as it was early in the year. I do think he was out of position quite a few times defensively early, and that's more specifically like from a rebounding standpoint. I think that's probably why he didn't play as much, but I would have given him a little bit more spin for that reason alone too, because I think we could have used a little bit more athleticism out there, and it really wasn't a Nolan Winter day. So, or Carter Gilmore for that matter. So I thought he earned a little bit more than he received today.
And I was just double checking, because to your point early, like maybe about 5 games ago, the usage rates for the Badgers, two of the top 3 usage rates on the team were Ilver and Amos. It was like Tonje, Ilver, Amos.
That shocks me none.
But if you look now, Amos is down to 5th. And it does feel like he's been more selective. It does feel like there's more swing the ball when I get it, or be a little more, have a little more clarity on what I'm looking for to get out of this offense possession. And that's a credit to him and the coaches. Like, it feels like he's adjusted in that sense.
100%. Like development is not always linear. And while it's not, while he's not come in and maybe be this 10-point a game starter that I think, I certainly thought when he was picked up in the portal, I thought that's where this was headed. The guy there was a point early in the year, probably within 12 games, where I was questioning, like, can this guy be on the floor? Is he too much of a liability due to decision-making to even be on the floor? And he's really come a long way in the last dozen games to try to play within the framework, swing the ball, like take more what is given to him. He's still aggressive, and you want him to be, because if you ask him to be too much of what if you ask him to go too far against the grain of what he is, then you're never going to get you're not going to get nearly enough juice out of him there. But I can't think of many 9th men like off the bench for Wisconsin that have had the ability to impact a game the way that he has, or that he can. I shouldn't say that he has, the way that he can. On a good Amos day, I think that he can give you a lot out of that 9th spot, even if it is 6 to 8 minutes, where, in a lot of years we haven't really had 9 guys to go to, or if we did, it was hardly impactful. So I think he's a worthwhile project in that spot.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, I didn't thought of it like that, really. Because you go back to the Johnny Davis sophomore team, right? Where obviously Hepburn gets hurt down the stretch really bad, and Davis was at like 80-90%, whatever it was. We were turning to Isaac Lindsey, and that wasn't even to the 9th man. He was like the 7th or 8th man. Like,
I know it. That was when Lauren Bowman was away from the program, right? Yeah, we didn't have a point guard option at all.
So Isaac Lindsey comes in, and you could just, like, great kid.
Right.
That wasn't the answer at that as a 7th man in a team trying to make a run in March.
No, and then you got Brad Davison sliding over and trying to fill that role, and that's
a great point.
Just not who either of them were. I mean, there are so many what ifs in Badger basketball, like tournament history, that you could point to, but yeah, that's a tough one. Like, the depth has not always been there. And I really do think that guard has done a really, really wonderful job with the resources that he has to build out this roster. When I say the right way, I think that the right way has changed. It used to be recruit, develop, guys over, try to get old, stay old. And I think that the formula is still largely the same, but it's a little different. It's recruit, develop, retain. That's one basket, and that's where hopefully your Blackwell, your Winters, you can retain those guys like Max, Crowell. All of those guys have been instrumental in having core pieces you can build around each year. And then it's, going portaling for long-term projects that you can also develop, which like Max, like Kamari.
Yep.
I think those guys are tremendously valuable nowadays. It just has to be part of the equation. And then your plug and play guys based on what are you missing, from the rest of that formula. And that's where we've gotten Tonje. And I'll be honest, I didn't think there was a world going into this year where we could hit on one of 3 portal pickups and be in the position we are at 19-5. But I'm really happy to be wrong because it meant a lot of internal development took place.
Yeah, that's really well said. I think we need to do another show at some point and just talk about how sustainable and repeatable this offseason delivery is. Like, you had 2 straight portal seasons where a guard has hit on a store. And say whatever you want about Store. Store was a hit. There's a reason.
Store was a huge hit. I don't want to rewrite history. He was a second-team All-Big Ten selection. Yeah,
he was a volume scorer, which this team needed. Tonje, nobody would trade Tonje for him. Let's be clear, but it doesn't make Store not a hit. We almost need to do a season and how repeatable that is. We do need to take one more quick break, and then I want to get back and talk to you about Kamari McGee for a minute. A couple comments in this chat about he needs more minutes. I'm curious what your take is on that, and then just any last big picture thoughts as we wrap up sweeping Iowa, which is never a bad thing. Let's take a quick break for our friends of the show. Come back. We'll talk a little Kamari McGee and wrap up the show with Dylan Graff. But today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is, as always, incredible long-term partner. Listen, at this point in my life, like FanDuel's like my 4th longest relationship. Like, I mean, Dylan's not even there, and I love Dylan. It's like my wife, my fan loyalties, and FanDuel. That's like it. Maybe my favorite Italian restaurant. And then my buddy Tony. If anybody remembers, I had to do the sweat block ads, and I used Tony as my sweat block ad guy because he used to. Anyway, FanDuel is incredible right now. Super Bowl 59 is coming up. $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. It is the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network, the official sportsbook of the NFL, the official sportsbook of all sorts of incredible organizations because they're the fastest, easiest, simplest way to do it. Great user interface, quick payouts when you win, bet in-game, bet on the coin toss, first touchdown. It is an incredible time to head over to our great partners at FanDuel, FanDuel.com. Always do it responsibly, but make the game a little more exciting with FanDuel over at FanDuel.com. All right, let's jump into this. Dylan, I want your take on this comment. I start a few comments up here, and we're going to try to get into a few comments to wrap this up. This is from a YouTube user, super generic user name there. I love it. Just start Kamari already. Here's where I've been. I want to tee it up with where I've been because you and I haven't talked about this a bunch. I don't want Kamari starting because I just feel like it creates a narrative where if you take somebody who's been starting for a long time, like Klesmit, you bring him to the bench, people just talk about that. I feel like it creates a negative narrative. But I have been saying, like, again, Kamari McGee didn't miss a shot today, shooting 56%. I think a lot of the hustle plays in that second half, it was Kamari McGee jumping in, doing this or that. I just think he needs more minutes, man. And I keep thinking you take a few from Klesmit. I just don't know where else you get him from, but he's playing too good, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. I definitely would not bother starting him. This season has definitely been, I don't want to say a roller coaster, but it's changed the way I kind of view Wisconsin basketball a little bit. In talking to Kirk Penny during local media day, he kind of foreshadowed the fact that there would be no traditional starting point guard. And I just, at the time, didn't fully buy it. But he made it clear, like, this system is designed to not, really need one. It just needs someone who can initiate offense. And I was pretty skeptical of that, especially coming out of, I think it was the UW River Falls scrimmage. Was there that night. When I went home, I wasn't feeling all that good about it. But, that was their first game with Blackwell starting at like the air quotes point guard spot. I was, how is this going to work? But I think it works just fine as is. I mean, clearly that the offense is humming. But Kamari is just the ultimate 6-man. I think he brings so much juice off the bench, and where a lot of times you're trying to, with your bench player, like hoping that they can just tread water and not be a negative while they're out there. There's zero drop off between whoever you take off the floor and in place of him. And he brings an entirely different dynamic. I really do think that John Blackwell is best served as an off ball. And maybe even long-term, that's where he's going to end up. I think that's probably what's best. But given the makeup of the roster, I think that getting him those opportunities when Kamari is out there to go off ball is great. But I'm with you. I think that he does need more minutes. I do think you have to take some from Max. I don't think it's got to be significant, but I think that you got to have Kamari playing 22 minutes a game. I just think he's too impactful, and he's your best on-ball defender, I think, in the pick and roll type scenario. I mean, I don't know if the numbers back that up. That's just the eye test, but I think that he brings so much to the team, both ends of the floor. He's shooting well. Like I don't see how you can justify almost not playing him a few more minutes. I just don't know how you can comfortably take him off the floor for that long. But I guess maybe that speaks to the quality of the depth that we have right now. But I would take some away from Max, just a couple.
Yeah, Beaudre McGee is your sixth man of the year. I think so too. Listen, there's a point where it's almost like in baseball, if you have a guy that's hitting 363, like I'm sorry to the utility man or second baseman or whatever position you have Klesman. Klesman feels like a second baseman in baseball. I'm sorry if he's hitting, he may be hitting 280. This other guy's hitting 363. We got to get him more at bats. Kamari's shooting 55% from three. Like there's just a point where you got to play him more if he's shooting at that clip.
Yeah, that's incredible. I truly cannot even fathom like the jump that he's taken as a 3-point shooter. He started so hot in the beginning of the year. You just kind of have to assume he's riding away with momentum, and that just hasn't been the case. The guy is the best corner shooting or 3-point shooter in the entire world, as it turns out.
Let me a couple more here to wrap up on this, because I know we're keeping it for a while. Any big picture thoughts here? Let's zoom out, get away from Iowa. What is your ceiling on this team? We had a comment in here about a Sweet 16 team. Another one saying a upside now is an Elite 8 team. Where are you at on this team in terms of ceiling?
So I've kind of hemmed and hawed on this a little bit. I feel like my ceiling, and that again, want to make that clear, that's not my expectation. But my ceiling for this group would be an Elite 8 group. The way that they can get hot shooting from the floor, I think it benefits them potentially if they hit the ground running in the tournament, to play a couple games in a row and build on that momentum. And, depending on how things work, like they could play in Milwaukee early on, which I don't think would hurt. But either way, I think that there's an Elite 8 ceiling here because I think that they have something really sustainable. Last year, it was kind of all or nothing. Either you knew within the first 8 minutes of the game more often than not if they were going to win or lose. I truly felt that way. They did not often surprise me, or come back. This group, if they get out, they come out hot, they're shooting well. Like, yeah, they might bury a squad. But even if they don't, we've seen them go down 8-0 a few times, even semi-recently, and they'll chip away at it. They'll do it in different ways. And if they're not like shooting hot from three, they might still hit 10 threes in the game, because of the volume of them that we're shooting at. Like today we shot under 40% from the floor, but we were still over 1.1 points per possession. And one's where you want to be. I think, in an ideal world to give yourself a chance to win. And so just because of just the formula of the offense, the amount of pieces that they have that I trust will give them something on any given night. To me, both the ceiling is a little higher and so is the floor for that same reason. So I would say Elite 8 is probably my ceiling for this group. I think that they can go toe to toe with. They have a chance to punch above their weight if they get far enough.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. I'm gonna ignite that hype train even a little bit more. I think this is the first time I've said it. I think it's a Final Four ceiling. I do. I think the floor is still real. You can drop out quickly with this team if you don't hit shots. I want to be clear on that, but
for sure, the tournament's a single game elimination. In my opinion, that is so lost on people.
Yes. Yep. No, it is, but that's why if you get on a heater, as my camera starts following me, I have an AI camera and it just goes off on its own at times, man. It's wild. if you have a team that can shoot this well, and here's where I've started to come around on it. It's not just a team that shoots well. It's a team that's full of veteran pieces that have bought into the system that are quite frankly unflappable. And that's what happened to last year's team against James Madison. It wasn't just that James Madison came out and punched us in the mouth. It was that team folded, man. This team doesn't fold. This team can play ugly. They can get down. They can get down double digits. And then they, like you said, that's a great point. They chip back. I think Tonje is just such a veteran leader with this group. I think listen, you need Crowell to play well. You need things to happen. But that's true for every team that makes a Final Four run. Every team needs things to go well. And it depends on the draw. Like if they wind up with, I don't know, there's some teams that certainly out there, if they end up with, I'm trying to think of a terrible matchup for Wisconsin. Anybody with a couple big athletic bigs, which like we saw against Michigan, right? There's teams they run into they're not going to beat. But with a decent draw, I think this team can make a run, man. I'm there with you.
I think they're in a better position to, if they find themselves in foul trouble, I think that there's a lot better depth. Like, in years past, if Crowell got into foul trouble, you were just hoping you could tread water. I mean, last year you'd slide Winter over when he was, $190 or whatever he was, and you got what you got. We haven't been able to really replace that like Chris Vogt kind of role, the last couple of years. And I think that's been a huge need. But right now, because of the emergence of Gilmore, because you have a guy like Xavier Amos, you're able to kind of pair them to offset the bigs. And, Winter and Crowell aren't playing a ton together, right? So you can slide him over and kind of sustain the foul trouble either direction. If it is going to be Winter who's in foul trouble, you have 2 4s that are right behind him. And even Marcus Silver, if you were really in a pinch, if that's your breaking case of emergency guy in the front court, like I can live with that. I just think they're in a better position.
I think it's well said. He is the great Dylan. I've already kept him 6-7 minutes more than I should. We're going to wrap up there, but I will always strive to get him back on the show to talk some more basketball, football stuff, all that, and plus what's going on in his life. On Wisconsin, thank you for tuning in. As always, really do appreciate y'all. Go check out Locked On Big Ten when you're done. Your biggest stories in the conference from portal, NIL realignment, all that craziness over in the Locked On Big Ten channel. We're going to wrap it here on Wisconsin. Badgers get the sweep of Iowa, and I am now on the Final Four ceiling train. Let's get it.